Chapter 14 The Caesar Code. I had something to mull over myself. An Arabian sheik, for such he had to be, speaking impeccable English with an accent that made it odds on that he was a university graduate. What was he doing in the shadow of the Sphinx leading a scurvy crew of land pirates? But then again, why not? Holmes had forecast a great meeting of Mohammedans in the mosque of Al-Ashar. No doubt my patient had come from some far-off oasis for just that gathering. I regretted that I had not questioned him regarding his social calendar, but shoved that thought aside. Medical ethics, you know. In our suite at the Shepherd's, I was happy to find Holmes and Orloff alone. Their mood was a clue that their news was not reassuring, and such proved to be the case. "Things have gone amiss, old chap. Chew's yacht arrived at Alexandria, but he is not aboard." "Good heavens, Holmes!" "They came by way of Rosetta. Obviously slipped Chew ashore there, and even now he is secreted aboard a native dhow making his way up the Nile Delta. Certain members of the Secret Service feel very charged, which helps us not a bit. But you're sure he's coming to Cairo? There is going to be a great meeting we anticipated in the Mosque of Al-Ashar in a week. That's what Chu is here for." Orlov was seated upright in a chair, his weight balanced on the toes of his feet, his hands resting in his lap. The man's ability to remain completely motionless and relaxed was a source of wonderment to my medically trained mind. It was as though he saved every ounce of strength for those moments when it was needed. Possibly that was why he was able to move so fast when he had to. Now he spoke. "Then there is the matter of the cable." My eyes shot towards Holmes questioningly, and he seemed to wince. The Hishouri Kamu put in at Port Said. The coffin containing the corpse of Sidney Purds remained aboard, but a certain crate did not. Burlington Bertie and Tiny were not able to pursue the object, so we've lost that as well. A horrible thought was crossing my mind. "Look here, you're chiding yourself for no reason." Chu suddenly altered his plans regarding himself and the sword. Might not my little foray last evening have been the reason? Certainly Lu Chan could have contacted the freighter, and I'll wager Chu's yacht has wireless equipment as well. The minute Chu learned we were in Cairo, he put an alternate plan into operation. "It's possible, you know," said Orloff. "There is an Arab expression," responded the sleuth. "All things are possible in the caravan of life." Now let us see what is possible for us. We have had reports from the intelligence people, the army, the civil authorities, all more chaff than wheat. Chu will be in Cairo. It is his plan that eludes me. I can't shake the idea that those tablets might have contained a secret of the past. You were at the pyramids today, Watson. How did they build them almost 5,000 years ago with nothing more than the lever, the roller, and vast embankments, plus the flood waters of the Nile to float the stone, added Orlov, and unlimited manpower. Wait! Surprisingly, it was my voice that rang out. Gray told me something interesting today. In the 12th century, Saladin's son had the notion to demolish the pyramids. He started with the Red Pyramid of Mycerinus, which had a casing of Aswan granite. They had the wheel and tools the Egyptians never dreamed of. Civilization had advanced 4,000 years. "What is your point?" asked Orloff. They couldn't do it. The best they could manage was 2 blocks a day. Destruction is easier than construction, but they couldn't tear it down. At this point there was a knock on our door, revealing Colonel Grey, whom I had just quoted. "Mr. Holmes," he said respectfully, "there's a Chinaman, Lu Chan, who requests permission to speak with you." I had prepared myself a small libation and now almost dropped the glass. "He is alone, I assume?" said Sherlock Holmes, getting a nod in response. "By all means, have him come up." "Wait!" the sleuth added thought caught Colonel Grey at the door. "He may be a messenger, a role he has played in the past. If I see him to the door, have the Oriental followed. If Dr. Watson shows him out, don't bother." Gray's face brightened. This was more to his taste. "I'll be standing by, sir." Orlov was at the sitting-room windows, checking the street below out of habit. Holmes's eyes, alight with interest, encountered mine. "This may prove a dividend from your night-time excursion, old chap." When Lu Chan was ushered into the room, the habitual sheen on his face was no more noticeable than at other times I had seen him. With a short, courteous bow to each of us, he assumed a chair in a nerveless fashion, a picture of Oriental calm. But he did not indulge in flowery preambles, so often a trademark of his race. He did not question the presence of Orlov, who was standing, watching him closely. "Mr. Holmes, I need—" Lu Chan took a quick breath, his only sign of agitation, and began again. "I am in great need of something, and I have something of interest." "The one for the other," was Holmes's rejoinder. My friend was seated with his legs crossed, leaning on one arm of his chair and regarding the visitor without antagonism, or any other emotion for that matter. Lu Chan nodded, and Holmes continued. "Then let us deal with your need first. There is an Orient Middle East liner entering the Suez Canal, destination Macau. I would like to be on it." Holmes's eyes narrowed. "You don't need me to buy you a ticket, I'm sure." Lu Chan's heavy lids blinked rapidly. "I do need you to get me out of Egypt. Alexandria, Port said. The canal, are all, the expression is bottled up, I believe. There is no warrant for me in England. But had I tried to book passage, I would have been in custody in a minute. Something about my passport, no doubt. Holmes shot a quick look at Orlov. "You could be put aboard at Port Tewfik," said the security agent. "What you ask can be done." Holmes let this hang in the air. "I do not know, Mr. Holmes, Chu San-Fu's plans regarding Egypt. I could tell you about the money he has spent of late in a number of Mideast countries, but I suspect you know more about that than I do. One thing, in Berlin, the Mannheim tablets? I negotiated for them. Another of those rare items that Chu San-Fu added to his collection. What happened? He did not sell them when he disposed of his collection. They were stolen property, so he could not have put them on the market anyway, but he seemed to attach great importance to them. The sleuth appeared disappointed. "You do have something?" "I hope so," the Oriental shrugged. "As you know, part of my duties were associated with Chu San-Fu's collection. There is a bit of guesswork involved in art objects. I developed the habit of attending estate sales and even disposal of property sales involving the belongings of unknowns, if their background was colorful." Holmes exhibited interest as the Chinaman continued. "I picked up the notebook of an explorer, Pusa, an Italian who had been with Giovanni Balzoni in Egypt. I had, sorry, it had entries regarding certain escapades of the incredible Balzoni. One page contained letters without meaning that Chu San-fu found intriguing. Then, 2 years ago, he referenced to it once as the gateway to the past. "You have it?" "No, but I have a copy of the strange message that my employer found so interesting, which you will give me if you can flee Egypt for Macao." Lu Chan indicated this was so. There was a lengthy pause, and the Oriental seemed to feel the need of some explanation. "Last night, Dr. Watson used words that I had refused to consider. Now I agree with him." His slanting eyes turned towards me. "It's time to get out." "Done," said Holmes. Lu Chan removed a piece of paper from his inner pocket, passing it to the detective. After regarding it for a moment, Holmes gave a signal to Orlov, who took the Chinaman from the room and out of our lives. What the waiting Colonel Grey thought of that arrangement I did not learn until later. As the door closed, I voiced a thought, tentatively. This could be some sort of bait. No more than a 10% possibility. Holmes was studying the message. "Lu Chan knows that if he has played us false, the Dutch authorities can pick him up in Macao. I'm inclined to consider this coded message as genuine. The timetable is right. It was 2 years ago that Chu's attention was caught by it. An idea could have been born in his mind at that time. One thing surprises me: the utter simplicity of the code. Holmes rose and spread the paper on an end table, allowing me to view it by his side. DW KWH IHHW RI WKH VLALWK UDPHVVHV OLHV WKH ERB LQ HWHUQDO HKVH XQNQRZQ WRNXUQD DQGDOPDPXQ VRQ RIWKH KHUHWLF KHHYDGHGGRRP. Simplicity, Holmes? You jest. This cipher might present problems, but for the spacing, which is revealing, consider the first line. There are 7 combinations of letters, 6 in the second line. We can assume they represent words. I don't see how that helps. Regard the same 2 lines, old fellow. There are 3 identical 3-letter combinations. WKH. Surely that indicates the word "the" to you. 3 letters and oft used. I can almost decipher this standing here, but let me hazard a guess. This associate of Balzoni, Pazza was his name, also an Italian. I assume this is a substitution cipher, 1 letter in place of another. Now, if you were an Italian and were going to put something in code, playing the game with yourself perhaps, is it not reasonable that you should think of a Roman hero like the first Caesar? Not being able to interpret the thoughts of others with Holmes's facility, I didn't know what would have done. I suppose that makes sense, I said. It is an historical fact that Julius Caesar encrypted his messages from Gaul by substituting letters 3 places farther on in the alphabet: D for A, E for B. Now, let us test this with the 3-letter combination of WKH. W becomes T and K is H. H represents the most used letter in the alphabet, which is E. The word is "the" as we have already assumed. Just note the number of H letters in this message. We have solved it, Watson. "We" had nothing to do with it, but if it made Holmes happy to put it that way, who was I to complain? When Wakefield Orloff returned to the room, the sleuth was seated, working on the cipher with a pen. It was so simple for him that he digested Orloff's report at the same time. "Luchan will be on the train to Suez within the hour. I've arranged to have the train stop at a point along the Bitter Lakes. A boat will get him to the liner before it enters the Sweetwater Canal. No one will be the wiser. So we've kept our part of the bargain." The security agent regarded the silent Holmes thoughtfully. "Gray can bring a man from the code office if you wish." Holmes waved off one hand in an aimless gesture without meaning, and I took it from here. "No need. Holmes has already deciphered it." It is with joy that I report that Orlov's jaw dropped slightly. "You do recall," I added with no little pride, "that Holmes's pamphlet on codes and secret writings is now required reading for the cipher division." My moment of reflected glory was interrupted by the sleuth, who was regarding his handiwork with a frown. "We may have broken one code and run into another. It would seem the late archaeologist, Pusa, was of a whimsical nature." Holmes allowed himself a small chuckle, and I suspected his humor was directed at himself. "Our substitution key is correct, Watson, for the letters become words, but what we end up with is a rather clumsy rhyme. Let me read it to you. At the feet of the sixth Ramses lies the boy in eternal ease, unknown to Kurna and al-Mamun, son of the heretic he evaded doom." The sixth Ramses, I would assume, is a pharaoh, but the rest means little to me. Orlov offered no comment, so I made a suggestion. "That Colonel Grey chap has been in Egypt for a devilishly long time, and seems up on all these things." "Capital idea, Watson." Orlov was already on his way to the hall and returned quickly with Grey. "I didn't know what to do when you left with the Chinaman, Mr. Orlov, so I stayed at my post." "Good thinking, Colonel," said Holmes. "Lu Chan is of no further concern to us, but another problem has arisen that requires your expertise. Can you make can you make anything out of this?" Gray read through the message Holmes handed him, and then read through it again in the manner of the military. "Better say nothing than say it wrong" is an army byword. It produces accuracy, but has a stultifying effect on inventiveness. "Well, sir," Gray finally said, stroking his mustache, "would this be in reference to a tomb, perhaps?" "Very possibly. What prompted you to consider that?" We were all clustered round the message on the table, and Gray, quite delighted to be the centre of attention, indicated certain words as he spoke. "At the feet of the sixth Ramses" could mean at the base of a statue of Ramses sixth, of course. Thank God it isn't Ramses second. There is no end to statues of him. The reference to boy evades me, but Kurna and al-Mamun certainly indicate a tomb. "Wait," said Holmes. "Kurna." He turned to me. "Didn't Mycroft mention Kurna, a city of thieves?" "Grave robbers," I stuttered. "That's right, sir," said Gray. "Al-Mamun refers to Caliph al-Mamun, who forced his way into the Great Pyramid in the ninth century in search of treasure. Bit of a disappointment that, since it had been sacked centuries before. Then Being unknown by Kurna and Al-Mamun must mean an undiscovered grave, one unpillaged by grave robbers, I said. I'll accept that, said Holmes. But look, does not "son of the heretic" refer to the boy in the second line? Gray's eyes lit up. The heretic in Egyptian history would be Amenhotep IV. Pity, said Holmes. I had hoped you would mention another name. Who? Do you recall, Watson, that rap mentioned a pharaoh who espoused a one-god idea? Iknaton, I said, and I will never know how that name came to my mind. Same chap, was Gray's surprising reply. Iknaton, Amenhotep, Akhenaten, all names for the same ruler, took charge in 1379, changed his capital from Thebes to Akhetaten, wanted to do away with the other gods in favor of the sun god, Aton. Didn't make it stick, you see. Out of touch with his people and was not very prepossessing. When you are in the God business, you have to have a bit of a personality to spread faith, as it were. Holmes's face had recovered its enthusiasm. Then this boy in the message must be the son of Iknaton. Gray shook his head. Iknaton, or Akhenaten, had no son. He was succeeded by his Menkhmar brother, I believe. But wait a minute. The colonel studied the message again. You have a cipher here, possibly written by an Egyptologist? Holmes nodded. When would he have been active? Holmes scratched his chin. I read about Balzoni. Oh, Belzoni. Gray was on familiar grounds. Everyone out here knows about him. Actually, this was written by an associate of his. Balzoni left Egypt in 1819. I know because a year later he wrote a rather good book on his achievements. Sorry, adventures. Point is that early in the century the tombs in Egypt were a bit of a new thing. At that time it was believed that Akhenaten was the father of Tutankhamen. Holmes shook his head. You wouldn't know of him, sir. Minor, 18th dynasty pharaoh. But he was very young when he became ruler of Egypt and died at an early age as well. Ruled for a mere 9 years, as I recall. I'm not so good on dates and numbers. I'd say you were doing quite well, commented Holmes with approval. He continued, All right, where are we? The message refers to a tomb. What would be important about that? A tomb unknown to grave robbers, Mr. Holmes. That would be a rare bird indeed, for the Pharaoh's possessions would be in it. The German expedition uncovered 30 graves of pharaohs and not one of them hadn't been looted. Then this Tutankhamen tomb would be valuable? Unbelievably, was Gray's immediate response. And the reference to doom? That can be read two ways. In a religious sense, the whole idea of the elaborate burials was to allow the pharaohs to make their trip to eternity in peace. Don't quote me, sir, but I've a thought that the despoiling of their graves would interrupt their process to the hereafter. Seems logical, I commented. And the other meaning? Inquired Holmes. Political. After his death, Akhenaten the heretic was expunged from Egyptian history since his one god theory was not accepted. Tutankhamen rejected the one god idiom, thereby avoiding the risk of doom of being removed. Well, the tomb seems to be of Tutankhamen, but where would it be? You mentioned the German expedition. That was Carl Richard Lepsius and his people. Where did he find so many graves? Same place that was such a happy hunting ground for Belzoni. Wadi Biban al-Maluk, the Arabs call it, the Valley of the Kings. Might not the boy Pharaoh be there? Gray shook his head. Lepsius's reputation as an archaeologist is enormous, and he felt that nothing was left in the valley. There's been no serious excavation work there since his time. Holmes's eyes had that opaque look I recognized. I read that book of Bolzoni's you mentioned. As I recall, he stated more or less the same thing. That's right, Mr. Holmes. But that's it, you see. Fusa, an obscure follower of the Italian adventurer, is dying. He cannot return to the Valley of Kings, and he has no heirs. His possessions were disposed of at a public sale. He leaves an obscure rhyme. It was a jest, a bit of irony from a dying man, for he knew something that the great Balzoni did not, nor Lipsius either. He knew there was an undiscovered tomb. Holmes's eye sharpened, and he regarded Gray with that faint smile of triumph. Might I guess that the tomb of Ramses the Sixth is in the Valley of the Kings? There was a startled look on the colonel's face. Dead on, sir. At the feet of Ramses could mean beneath his crypt, I think. Before Holmes even looked at him, Orlov was on his way out of the room. As Gray and I exchanged a puzzled glance, Holmes chuckled. Mr. Orlov is a great believer in anticipation, a quality cherished by my brother. Gray took a breath. That would be Mr. Mycroft Holmes, sir. Holmes nodded. And the rap you mentioned is Sir Randolph Rapp? Since the colonel was looking at me, I agreed. If you'll pardon the thought, there's some heavy weights involved in this matter. Holmes was caught completely by surprise and chortled. I follow your thought, Colonel, and you are more right than you know. However, the gentlemen in question are in London, whereas you are here, and I am grateful that you are. Colonel Grey's features grew redder yet, and he looked as though he had just received the Victoria Cross from Her Majesty. I'm sure he was thinking that it had all been worth it, even wet nursing a seasick general practitioner who seemed fated to have unusual experiences.